This is Whitley Strieber, and this is Dreamland. You've reached the edge of the world. Today on Dreamland, we have a really remarkable story. The perfect story for Easter. I could not imagine a better story, and it all came together with a series of extraordinary synchronicities. And it's quite wonderful. It's about the lady. And of course, you know of the lady from Chris Bledsoe, and some of you feel like, well, this isn't really our kind of thing, and others feel it's part of the whole experience. And I like Chris very much, and I have always been aware of the sincerity with which he approaches this. And I would like to say that this is the Easter where his prediction of 2012 prediction was pointed out of the event that is supposed to take place. And if it doesn't take place, then I think that a lot of people in the UFO community are just going to tune Chris out, and you shouldn't do it. We are all here out on the edge, trying our best to do something that is very new and very hard. The lady is a remarkable part of this. I have had experience, as you know, with a female gray, but she was certainly no lady. This lady is very different, and I would like to welcome with joy Amanda to this show. Amanda has had probably one of the deepest experiences of the lady ever in history. Welcome, Amanda, to Dreamland on this Easter weekend.
Thank you so much, Whitley. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I'm so happy that Helen McCaw, my dear friend, introduced us. What an experience to talk to you. Now, let's share that experience with our audience. Can you begin by telling us first just a little bit about yourself? And then we'll go on to your first experience of the lady, and we'll move from there through the whole extraordinary story.
Absolutely. Well, I would consider myself to be a hereditary psychic. I come from a long line of psychics on both sides of my family. And so I've been having experiences since I was 6 with different things, mostly retrocognition, like I would go to places and know things from the past, as if they were happening in real time. So my first experience that I remember when I was 6 years old, I was at a castle in Wales with my parents, and I was coming down the tower, the steps of the tower room, and I saw blood on the steps, and I started screaming and said to my mom, "There's blood on the steps," and of course my mom couldn't see it, but I could see it as if it was really there, and I could feel the fear of the person whose blood it was as well. And I knew that it was a man and he had been stabbed by someone who he really loved and trusted. And I could feel the whole thing in my body. And I was also seeing it like a vision. And obviously, I had those same feelings that that man had. And I didn't know what on earth was happening. I was 6 years old. And so I was crying to my mom and pulling on my mom's sleeve, saying, "There's blood on the steps." And I tried to run because I felt as if that blood, if it touched me, then I would be pulled even further into that experience. And so I tried to run away and like jump over the steps. And my mom tried to, stop me. So eventually I broke free of my mom's grip and ran down the steps and screamed. There's blood on the steps. And as I got out from the bottom of the tower through the door, my mom came and caught me. And obviously, she chastised me because I was 6 years old and I just ran down these extremely steep stone steps. And this woman, who was a tour guide, overheard us and she came over and said to my mom, "No, you need to listen to your daughter because there actually was blood on those steps and it was 700. I can't remember how many years, 700 and something years ago, that a man was killed in exactly that place.
Oh my goodness. And how did your mother react to that?
Well, my mum kind of looked at my dad and said, "Oh, because the gift was in the family, but my mum never developed it in herself. She was quite scared of it. So I think she realized that I had the gift then.
Yeah, and so it was known in the family, your grandmother perhaps, or grandparents, or your father.
Yeah, my grandmother on my mother's side, she had the sight and she didn't really like it very much because she often saw things that were quite scary. Like she would see if someone was going to like get sick or die or have an accident or something bad was going to happen. And but she later in her life she developed it more and she became a very spiritual woman. Um, but I know when she was younger, she was quite perturbed by her visions as well. And my mum had dreams about aircraft disasters before they happened or while they were happening. So, they were both very gifted, but they never really knew what to do with it. Whereas in my case, I really feel like I had no choice. I had to be the one to learn more about this and develop it further, I think.
Yeah, the spiritual side of it seems to be fairly important, and in fact, very important in your case. Can you tell us a little bit about your spiritual life as it has been?
Yeah, so I remember being very spiritual since I was a child, and I think now, with what I now know, that I think the lady was with me since I was a child, but I just didn't realize. There used to be a presence, a female presence, that would be in my bedroom at night, and whenever I was scared, because we moved into a house that was quite haunted, and me and my sister could feel this presence there that was not benevolent. And we'd be scared to go to bed sometimes. And around that same time, I would go to bed often, and there would be this female presence in my bedroom, very welcoming and very warm and loving, and also had this fragrance, which I now know some people call the scent of sanctity. But there was this scent which was very sweet, like rose petals or marzipan kind of mixed together, and it was a very comforting scent. And often I would get into bed and I would feel she was there, like at the foot of my bed, watching over me. And that was when I was about 6, 7 years old. When that began. And then my mum and dad, they were both spiritualists. So they were very open-minded about all of these things. But I was raised Christian and I went to a very religious school. But my school just didn't correlate with what I felt about the divine. Like I had this divine knowing really from a young age, I would say, even though it would be hard to put that into words. But it definitely felt connected with this feminine presence. And then I was raised Church of England and I had a Catholic friend and I was telling her about my experiences. And she said, "Oh, you must come to my church and pray to Mary. It sounds like you've been visited by Mary." And in my church, we didn't really incorporate Mary apart from, at Christmas time when she gave birth to Christ. It wasn't really part of our education. So I used to sneak off to the Catholic Church and pray to Mary. And when I learned the Hail Mary, I was in the Catholic Church all the time, sneaking, praying the Hail Mary.
The
And so,
Hail Mary is such a good prayer. Hail Mary, full of grace. The Lord
yeah.
is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus Christ. I love that prayer. The rosary has always been a big part of my life. And I wonder, do you pray the rosary?
I do. I joined a prayer group with a friend of mine, Raylene Abbott, and it was Raylene Abbott whose prayer group I was participating in when I had my first encounter with the lady, my first physical encounter. So I was praying the rosary, yeah.
Your first physical encounter, folks, we can't go past that. It's time for a little break. And when we come back, we're going to start the most extraordinary story of the lady you have ever heard, I think. It's certainly the most extraordinary one I've ever heard. We'll be right back.
Did you know that a family, probably very much like your family, once spent years with the visitors in their everyday lives? I'm not talking about downloads or magical experiences. I'm talking about daily life. That was my family, my wife Ann and our son, at our cabin in upstate New York many years ago. I wrote a book about it, two books, Transformation and then Breakthrough, that are a diary of those extraordinary days. When Transformation was published, the media was ready for us. They beat the book to death. They made sure it sold very few copies. In fact, you probably haven't read Transformation or Breakthrough. You probably never heard of them. But they remain an absolutely unique chronicle. Now, what I've done, since I think that many more ordinary families are going to be experiencing life with these visitors sooner or later, is that I have updated Transformation, and I'm calling it Transformation 2025. It brings together all of our new knowledge of them, of our own minds, of our brains, of how the interaction works, all of it. It's absolutely unique in the world. Transformation 2025 will be out on December the 15th on Kindle, shortly after that in hardcover and softcover, and an audiobook read by me. Transformation 2025. Don't miss this. As we get closer to disclosure, we get also closer to contact. I've done this. Anne did it. Our son did it. It's perfectly possible. It's not easy. But what an adventure Transformation and Breakthrough are. And the adventure continues. And it will continue soon in many more lives, I think. Your life, your family's life, what will it be like? Find out what we experienced. Learn from it and be ready. Transformation is coming. Transformation 2025.
We're talking to Amanda, who has had a lifetime of experience with the lady. She's English and she comes from a family with a long tradition of psychic abilities and powers and has become very devoted to the lady. Can you tell us about your first physical experience with the lady?
Yes, I can, Whitley. So my first physical experience with the lady was actually in April 2016. So next month it will be 10 years ago. And I had gone to a wonderful pilgrimage site called Orcival in the Auvergne region of France. And I was there to pray for 200 people as part of a prayer pilgrimage organized by my dear friend Raylene Abbott. And we had 13 different women in different sacred sites around the world, not all Christian. We prayed, any denomination, any religion, it didn't matter. It was to keep this power of prayer alive so that people would know that prayer can lead to miracles, because Raylene had been doing this for 30 years, and every year she did it with different women. And every year people were healed, miracles happened, things that people didn't expect. And certainly a miracle happened for me, because when I went to Orcival, Orcival is a very ancient pilgrimage site from the 8th century. And there was a statue of the lady there, which was originally painted, well, it was made from, I don't know, dark wood originally, and then it was later painted white and gilded with gold. And I heard about this place because it was known to be a very famous, miraculous pilgrimage site. And I decided to go there. And it was quite far from where I was living at the time, but it felt like the right place to be. So I went to the basilica, prayed at the foot of the lady, and I went back again and prayed at midnight because the basilica was still open. And when I was praying at midnight, that was when I felt some kind of power enter into my body, like that vibrational power. Something came into me, and I think it must have been some communication or communion with her, whatever she was. I didn't know at that time. So I went back to my auberge, which was the basilica was in the middle of there was like a circular square. It was a square, but it was circular in shape. And the basilica was in the center, and my auberge was on one side of the basilica. So the basilica was really in the center of everything in Orsabal. And when I went back to my auberge, one of the strange things that happened is I remember before I went to bed, I had an uncontrollable fit of laughter. Like I remembered this just last night. I don't know why, but I could not stop laughing. After I'd been in the church praying for these 200 people, I could not stop laughing before I went to bed. So I don't know what that means, but that came back to me yesterday. That was a detail that returned to me.
I
And
think just if I may pause for a moment, I think I probably do know a bit about that. My wife Anne always said that joy was the key to to spiritual growth, and she would say, "How do we start to really see ourselves? It begins with laughter. If you can laugh at yourself, you're on the way." So maybe that was what it was about. Go ahead.
I was laughing at myself. I took a selfie to send to a friend and I couldn't stop laughing at this selfie. I don't even know why. So that is really interesting.
I find it very easy to laugh at myself, and listeners and viewers, I hope you can look to things in yourself that you think you are wrong or whatever, and learn to laugh. It lightens the mood and the load. And as we go on, we'll talk more about lightening of loads because that's a important part of the experience of the lady. So go ahead with your story now.
Okay, so yeah, I couldn't stop laughing and I don't know why. And then I fell asleep. And then at 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up because I had a dream about an extremely bright white light. And the light was so bright that it woke me up. And then when I opened my eyes, to my shock, the light was actually in my room. And it was to the right side of my bed. It looked like it was by the window, but it wasn't coming from the window. And then I watched it as this, I now know it to be an orb, but back then, of course, I didn't know any of these things. Huge orb, and it moved slowly from the left, sorry, the right-hand side of where I was, across in front of me, and then to the left side of my bed. And it was hovering, and then I watched as this orb transformed into the shape of a woman. And it was, when I say transformed, she was coalescing out of the light. So I was watching as her physical flesh was forming and becoming dense out of this light. And the light was swirling around, and I could see her hands. I couldn't see her face. Her face was completely veiled, but I could see her hands and her wrists up to about here underneath her cloak. And I mean, she was flesh, but the flesh was made of light and it was illuminated from the inside and it was glimmering. And then there was a red light where her heart would be, and it was scintillating, moving, swirling red light here. And then, to my immense shock and surprise, she spoke and she said, "You called, oh no, sorry, she said, people come here to see the Black Madonna, but this is what I really look like. You called me, so what do you want?
What a question. What a moment in your life. I wonder what I would do if I was asked a question like that from someone so extraordinary. What was your response?
I could not formulate a thought, let alone an answer to that question.
What do you want?
Well, it's very interesting because I could not answer. And so I think she understood that I could not answer. And so she then extended a filament of light, which was about so wide, from the center of her body where the solar plexus would be. And she scanned me. And at the time, I knew nothing about UFOs, NHI, UAPs, any of these things. I was totally not part of this world at all. So I knew nothing about scanning or any of these things. And this filament of light came out and it just moved up and down through the center of my body like this, at this kind of speed for hours. And I wasn't paralyzed.
Wait, for hours. How long? And
I
w-
think 3 hours
oh
because
my God.
mhm.
You were there with this light, being of light for 3 hours. My goodness, how extraordinary. This is
Yeah.
the only story like that I've ever heard in my life. And but you're telling it with such absolute sincerity. I'm not doubting you at all. I think it would be rather an insult and a bit of a sacrilege to doubt you. But so go ahead.
Yeah, it was 3 hours because it was 3 a.m. I looked at my watch and it was 3 a.m. when the light woke me up. Because obviously I'd just woken up and I wanted to know why I was awake. So it was 3 a.m. approximately. And I can only speculate that it was 3 hours because dawn was breaking when she left. And dawn would have come around 6 a.m. then, I think. It was April, so yeah, something like that, I would imagine. But I didn't
You know,
check the
3 a.m. is a very important time in spiritual life. Uh, in the some yoga traditions in India, it's called Brahma Muhurta time, the time when the mind is most open. And that's when she came to you. And this is also the time that I have had in my life so much experience of this level of reality, although no one as exalted as she has ever come into my life. And I'm so grateful to know of your experiences. Can you now tell us what came from the scanning?
Okay, so yeah, after like I said, I'm sure it was about 3 hours. And as dawn started to break through, she said to me, what you want is the truth, and the truth you shall have. And then she told me, and if you want to know the truth about your boyfriend, look at his phone.
Oh my God, she told you to look at his phone. Poor guy. He had no chance whatsoever. So then what happened?
Well, I immediately snapped out of my reverie that I was in because I wasn't in a trance, I wasn't paralyzed or anything like that, but I was obviously in some kind of reverie, some communion with her. And I immediately snapped out, sat bolt upright, and said no. And then as soon as I said no, the contact broke, and then she moved. I watched as she floated in her embodied form backwards across the room, so from the left across in front of me, and then out through the window. So she actually floated through the glass, and then I watched as she dissipated into the dawn.
That's a beautiful story. Unfortunately, though, I'm not so sure it was such a beautiful story for the boyfriend. What happened then?
Well, the boyfriend, then ex-boyfriend, obviously now. Uh,
Yeah.
He came to collect me the following day, and at breakfast, I told him what had happened, obviously. And I asked if I could look at his phone, and he ran away and deleted everything on his phone.
So that was you also deleted him from your life, I would guess.
Not long thereafter.
Yeah.
I found out what it was though. I already knew. I'm, clairvoyant. It's not really easy for anyone to hide things like that from me. So I already knew, and he was just in contact with his ex, and he told me that he wasn't, and that's what it was all about. Um,
So he was still with his ex.
he
And
wasn't with her, but he was still helping her, being emotionally supportive, sending her money and things like that. So they still had a very ongoing relationship that I didn't know about. Well, he thought I didn't know about. So that's what the lady was trying to alert me to.
yes, yes, she was definitely on your side and protecting you. And goodness knows why. And we'll discuss that and many more stories. This is just the beginning. In just a moment, we'll be right back. Have you ever read Communion? Or have you never read Communion? It's out in a new edition, very powerful, a subtly new cover that reflects the fact that the visitors are now looking back at us because they truly are. You can get it from the unknowncountry.com store as a Kindle, as a beautiful, sumptuous paperback, or as an unabridged audiobook read by me. It's the first time in the whole life of Communion that it has been read in full in audio format. And believe you me, I felt that reading. I put my life, my memories into it, and I trust you can hear it in the voice. I sure felt it while I was reading. So get Communion, listen to it, read it. Communion is of central importance to all of our lives. Where is the unknown country? Is it out there in the stars? Or is it also somewhere else? Is it in us, in you? Unknown country, join us today. Go to unknowncountry.com right now and join us. Join the questions. Join the search. Join the adventure. Unknowncountry.com. There's no place like it in the world. And subscribers who do not see the ads, don't forget to take a look at Transformation 2026. It's a unique reading experience or listening because I've read it for Audible as well. And it is about what it's like and going to be like for many more people as the little gray beings come more deeply into our lives. And we've had a thing lately when the Vice President of the United States has said they're demons. They're not demons, they're just cantankerous. So we can learn to live with them very easily, and they can bring many blessings and gifts to our lives. So don't be afraid of them. And like the people in the military and now the VP are, it's a different, the real story is very different. Now let's go back to your experience. You must have uh, the scan. I don't think you've told us the whole story of what you learned from it, because did you not learn? I might be going ahead on the story. I'm not sure. Uh, did you not learn from the scan about dropping certain things in your life, in your inner life? Can you tell us about that?
I absolutely did, yes, and I was extremely reluctant to drop those things.
What sort of things were they? I'm not going to pry into your private life, but just give us a flavor of what kind of things and she how she communicated to drop them, because this is really very important to our own spiritual journeys of each of us who are involved in listening and watching.
Absolutely. Well, the day that I had this experience, so I had this experience at 3 a.m. Then my ex-boyfriend came to collect me at breakfast. We had breakfast together. And then we went to a shop nearby because I was very upset. Because of finding out that he'd been deceiving me essentially, or thought he was. And we had a little bit of a, talk about that, and I was very sad. But we then patched things up, and as we were about to leave, I spotted a knife in the window of a small souvenir shop on the opposite side of the basilica. And it was a Legal knife with a pearl handle that I wanted to replace one that I'd been given and I'd lost. And I'm sure you know, going to France a lot as you do, that there's a tradition of giving people the girl knives, birthdays and anniversaries and things like that. So I wanted to
Yes.
so I wanted to replace this knife, and when we were in the shop, I happened to ask the man behind the counter, who was a man about 35, if he'd ever heard of anyone having any strange experiences there, to do with the church or anything in the vicinity. And he said, yes, me. And he went on to tell me, and my then partner, that one year, almost to the day before, he had been very depressed. His wife had left and taken the children, and he lived above his shop. So he lived in an apartment above his shop, so directly opposite the basilica, but on the other side of where my auberge was. And so he said that he was very depressed, and he went to the basilica after work that day to pray to the lady, because that night he had determined that the following day he was going to take his life, that he felt he had nothing to live for. And his wife had gone, the children had gone. He felt it was all his fault, and he was in a very dark place. And so he then told me that that night, when he was in bed, 3 o'clock in the morning, he had a dream about a bright white light. And that dream was so overpowering and intense that it woke him up, just like it did for me. And in his case, he sprang out of bed and went to the window, thinking there was something happening outside, because he lived there. He wanted to see where this light was coming from. Nothing, it was all in the room. And he said he ran back to bed and was hiding under the covers, looking like this at this ball of light. And the ball of light did exactly the same thing. It moved from the right to the left and then took the shape of a woman, hovering above the ground in the same way as it was for me. And she was also veiled, and well, he said cloaked. Um, no red light where the heart would be, but he said he could also see her hands. And in his experience, he said that she said to him, oh yeah, and what I didn't tell you as well is her voice is very high pitched and crystalline sounding and very resonant, and it's not like anything I've ever heard before or since. And so he said the same, like that he said her voice was like a bell, like a resonant, high pitched bell. And when she spoke, she said to him, do not do what you are planning to do. You are not supposed to die. Your wife has left and she's taken the children and she will not be back. But the reason she has left is because you were born psychic and you have been repressing your gifts all of your life. And in repressing your gifts, you've closed down your heart and your wife couldn't reach you emotionally. And that's the reason why she's left. And then she said, you will regenerate your friendship, but she won't be coming back. But you have another reason for being here, and you are not supposed to do this. And he said he was crying when he was telling me. I was crying. We were both crying. And he just said that he will never ever forget this moment, because he said everything she said was true, and that all of his life he had been aware of other realities, and he did not want to be because he thought that was not manly. It wasn't a manly thing. And especially in France, it's got a particular culture.
Yes, I know French culture a bit, as much as anyone who's not French can ever know it, which is not a lot.
Yeah, yeah. So
You're English, you have even more trouble. The English have been annoying the French for 1,000 years. So, so it's all that relationship between England and France is one of the joys of my life. I love to take my English friends with me to France and have them meet my French friends, and it's really fun.
I would love to see that as well. I love the French culture. I lived there for 10 years until recently, and I absolutely love it.
I do too. I'm going to go to be with some friends in France for uh, the solstice on the 21st of June. Perhaps you and Helen and our other friends we could all go together. It would be really fun.
That would be fantastic. I would love that.
Wouldn't it be fun? Let's see if we can do that, folks.
Yeah.
And oh, the journeys of life. Very important for you, all of us, to take our journeys. The journeys are very important. The pilgrimages. This all started for Amanda, remember, with a pilgrimage. And the world, and it doesn't really matter it's a mistake, I think, to concentrate on one religion or another. And as you mentioned earlier, in her pilgrimage, there were many different people or different religions involved. The whole world is a vibrant presence, and you can find these numinous presence beings in through any religion that you wish, or on your own if you're not inclined to be religious. But do pray, find your way that way. That's very important, or they can't know you're there. All right, we'll be right back.
Did you know that a family, probably very much like your family, once spent years with the visitors in their everyday lives? I'm not talking about downloads or magical experiences. I'm talking about daily life. That was my family, my wife Ann and our son, at our cabin in upstate New York many years ago. I wrote a book about it, 2 books, Transformation and then Breakthrough, that are a diary of those extraordinary days. When Transformation was published, the media was ready for us. They beat the book to death. They made sure it sold very few copies. In fact, you probably haven't read Transformation or Breakthrough. You probably never heard of them. But they remain an absolutely unique chronicle. Now, what I've done, since I think that many more ordinary families are going to be experiencing life with these visitors sooner or later, is that I have updated Transformation, and I'm calling it Transformation 2025. It brings together all of our new knowledge of them, of our own minds, of our brains, of how the interaction works, all of it. It's absolutely unique in the world. Transformation 2025 will be out on December the 15th on Kindle, shortly after that in hardcover and softcover, and an audiobook read by me. Transformation 2025. Don't miss this. As we get closer to disclosure, we get also closer to contact. I've done this. Anne did it. Our son did it. It's perfectly possible. It's not easy. But what an adventure Transformation and Breakthrough are. And the adventure continues. And it will continue soon in many more lives, I think. Your life, your family's life, what will it be like? Find out what we experienced. Learn from it and be ready. transformation is coming. Transformation 2025.
So the man then he had another life to live, and now it's a year later, and you are in his shop, and he's living the life he didn't intended to end. Did you talk at all about what that was like and how it felt for him to still be here?
Yeah, we did. As I said, we were both crying, and I was completely shocked because I didn't know what had just happened to me. I had no context for what I had experienced. And he said to me that he'd been afraid all of his life. And then that night, everything changed for him. He said, after that night, I was afraid of nothing because I knew the lady was with me.
And folks, that lady is with you too, all of us. Uh, and it's really worth exploring Chris Bledsoe's work a little bit. And especially, I'm doing this show in part because of the importance of understanding his efforts and on this particular Easter, as we've discussed before. All right, now let's go on down the road a little bit. What was the next experience?
Okay, so after I had that experience, despite having had spiritual, mystical experiences and psychic experiences all of my life, I did not know how to contextualize what I had gone through. And there was nobody who could help me, like nobody in any of my esoteric circles or spiritual circles or psychological circles, no one could help me at all. And I didn't think at all to correlate the experiences with any of the Marian apparitions because I think that would have been overwhelming to me to imagine that, it was the Virgin Mary perhaps who had shown herself, although the man in the shop, he believed that. Um, and it took me, I think, about 18 months. And then I met Richard Stanley, the film director. At the time, I was working in Paris as a researcher for an esoteric TV channel. And I was asked to find an English-speaking expert on the history of the Cathars. And so Richard popped up, and he was on a list of 10 people that I needed to contact. And our very first conversation, he said to me, "Oh, I'll add you to my private Facebook group, and you can see the kind of things I'm talking about there." So the very first post that I saw when he added me to his private Facebook group was him talking about his own encounters with the lady 15 years previously and correlating it to the apparitions of Mary, and also talking about a more ancient tradition that was known in the Pyrenees, in Montségur and the surrounding areas of La Dame Blanche. And of course, my heart leapt because I thought, finally, here's someone who understands, someone that I can talk to. So I immediately messaged him and told him about my encounter, and then that was it. We just connected and we were writing to each other all the time. He was in Montségur and I was near Paris. And then after a while, he invited me to go and visit him in Montségur. So I went, and on my first visit, we were sitting in the home of one of his friends that was right on the edge of the mountain. And so there was literally nothing between us and the mountain. And so I was looking out the window, and then I saw her. And in this particular experience, I don't know how tall she was, but I think at least 200 feet tall and at a distance. And she was wearing a turreted headdress, very tall turreted headdress with a kind of inverted V shape on the top and some kind of gown that I couldn't really see because it was at a distance, but it was quite tight. Um, and yeah, she had two male beings flanking her on either side. And I do not know to this day what they were because I've never seen anything like them before or since. They almost looked as if they were made out of the mountain itself. And they were holding her arms like they were holding her up or protecting her in some way. Um, and her hand was in this gesture. And as I watched her, she was broadcasting something to me that I couldn't hear in human language, but I knew there was some kind of communication taking place, and I was transfixed. And I wasn't paralyzed again, but I didn't want to move like in my first experience. But the strange thing that happened then is that my hand formed into this shape, and it stayed in this shape for 4 hours. And I then went back.
You could, wait. You couldn't move it? You couldn't
Yeah.
change, really?
Hmm.
That shape, that gesture is seen in so many paintings, especially the more esoteric ones of Jesus and the saints and so forth, in that were made by people who had a lot of secret knowledge. And the paintings, of course, we gaze in them and say, "Oh, it's all religious painting from the Middle Ages and the Renaissance." But this means something. Do you know what it means? To you. I mean, it obviously it's a blessing, but what did it mean to you when you were seeing it?
Well, that's what it felt like. It felt like a blessing as well. And then I later, like you say, I looked it up and discovered it was known to be a gesture of benediction. That's all I
Yes,
know about it. Mm.
benediction, the granting of grace upon you. And what does that mean, folks? Precisely what it means is the raising of your vibration to a higher level so that you can engage with these sacred presences. Uh, and this is critically important. You can draw yourself just by thinking of this. Imagine in your mind this lady standing there, an enormous being of a great power, standing over you like this. And benediction will come to you. But don't forget to pray, and pray in whatever way you're comfortable with. It doesn't have to be the Catholic rosary, it can be your prayer. It's even okay if you make up your prayers. But it's important to offer your soul through prayer. So go ahead. We've got a lot more to talk about, goodness knows.
I just want to say how much I love what you just said.
Oh, thank you. Well, I love what you're saying too. I think this is a very important and powerful experience to be together and do this. And I have a feeling that your lady is certainly involved in this conversation. Because she's emerging. And, Chris Bledsoe is right. She is emerging. And she came to me. I'll tell you a little bit we were discussing the Weaver yesterday. And you know, there was and you've touched on Montségur and Rennes-le-Château. Well, the church there is an important part of this. And we're going to get into the Cathars folks in a moment too. Uh, when I went there last summer, I was very kindly allowed to go into the graveyard that is kept locked, and it's kept locked because of the difficulty of tourists going in and chipping bits off the graves stones in order to take them home as souvenirs. And it's unfortunate, but that happens, and so they keep it locked. But the mayor let me go in. And as I walked in, all the bells in the church burst out because it happened to be noon. I thought, my God, that can't be because of me, but it was because the noon hour had been reached. And I was able to put my hand on the grave of Madame Thénard, the lady who was the constant companion of Abbe Saunière. And there was an immediate connection because she was deeply involved in the still very secret presence of the Cathar tradition that is in southern France. And it was a really important experience in my life because that energy that I felt was so valuable to me. she was a weaver, and so is the lady. Tell us a
Mm.
little bit about the way she has woven your life.
Well, absolutely. And I could not agree more with what you just said. Absolutely true. And I'm really happy you had that experience in Rennes Chateau. It's such a special place.
Yeah, it sure is. Well, let's go on now with your own experience. Uh, where are we exactly? We have been with the man who was saved from rescued from suicide by the lady.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's time, isn't it, for us to go down to southern France, to Montségur. Isn't is that I don't want to leave any of the story out. So have I if
That's
I've
correct.
left
That's correct.
okay, so let's go. Let's
So
go.
what then happened when I had this gesture, excuse me, um, it would not go away until I had communicated something to Richard. Now, I was not aware at the time that Richard had been waiting for communication from the lady for 15 years since his first experience. And that experience changed his life to such a degree that he left his career as a film director making music videos in London and moved to Montségur, changed everything, and he became like the unofficial guardian of the Cathar faith in Montségur. And he brought a lot of people there, took them up the mountain, gave them their own experiences. Um, and he'd been waiting, however, for communication himself. Now, to this day, I do not know what she said to him through me because I was not there. I had vague memories, but at one point I remember that she put her hand on his head in a kind of blessing, and that was when I was able to finally release that gesture out of my own hand. And
So
he
the gesture was in your hand and you couldn't move, you couldn't change it.
Yes, for 4 hours, yeah.
4 hours, my God. Go
Mm.
ahead.
And so during that time, during that 4 hour period after when we went back to Richard's house, she was just communicating through me the whole time to him. But I don't fully remember what she said, and he doesn't fully remember it either because we were both in some other realm, other reality. And it was only when I had communicated everything she wanted to say that I was then able to release my hand. And that was when I placed my hand on his head as a kind of blessing. And I now know with the consolamentum, the Cathar benediction, it happens through the transmission of the hand upon the head.
Yes, this is why I'm so eager whenever someone has a baby in my life, someone in my life. I really very much want to get to put my hand on the baby's head when the fontanelle is still open, because that grace, it's not special to you or to me. It flows through anyone who has a good, strong heart. And when you do that, the grace goes right into the baby and will stay in that person for the rest of their lives.
That is so beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah. We're all sacred beings. We're just afraid to admit it. But let's go
that,
ahead and do that.
that is so true, Whitley.
Yeah, it is. Sure is.
Why are we so afraid to love and be loved? That's my question. Why are we so afraid to admit we are sacred beings? And
Yeah,
I
it's a
believe, sorry,
good
go on.
question.
I believe this is the message of the lady. You know, all these years, it's been 10 years now since she's been coming to me. And fundamentally, the deepest message is this. It's like we are divine, we are sacred, we are full of love, we are here to manifest that love. And yet we are so afraid of that as well. And I don't know why.
Well, the fall of man is also a discovery of of our independence from deity. And our journey in life is a journey back to the sacred. So taking that journey is what we all must try to do. And you're doing an incredibly beautiful job of it. And the lady is really very much with you. Now let's go on to Montségur and tell us what happened there to you.
Oh gosh, when I went to Montségur, I had felt all my life like I was looking for something. I traveled a lot, lived in different places. I was seeking something, a feeling of home, feeling of belonging that I had never felt anywhere before. And the moment I went into that village and I saw that pog rising in the distance with the chateau at the top, I knew that I had found home. I had found what I was looking for.
A lot of us are realizing that we were there, that we are Cathars.
Yeah,
Yeah. But you met the lady again there, didn't you?
I did. I did. So that second experience was when she was at a distance and she was 200 feet high, I'd say. And then that was when I had the gesture. And just to mention about the gesture, there was a man, I later found out, a man who was a romantic poet called Maurice Marg, who was from France, and he went to Montségur back in the 19th century, and he wrote about Esclamande, the Lady of Montségur, whose name means the light of the world. And he said in this book that Richard showed me, her hand will be seen making a gesture above the clouds, a gesture of blessing. And that is how you know she is there.
Now, she is there and here and is going to become close to all of us during this time of change in our world. It's not going to be an easy time, but we grow through these changes as a species, as individuals, as societies, and as part of the earth, as part of the earth. Now I want to talk a little bit. Is there anything more before I go into, because I'm going to talk a little bit about Fatima and its significance and its relationship to this, but this is mostly going to be me talking. I don't want to leave anything of your story out. And if I have, let's talk about it before I go ahead.
Okay, so I did have several more physical encounters with the lady in Montségur, and then more when I came back to England as well. But
Well,
I
well,
guess
tell us about these.
okay. So the second encounter that I had in Montségur was I was sitting outside in our garden overlooking the edge of the mountain, and I was taken up. Now, bear in mind at this time, I knew nothing about UFOs, any of these things, but I was literally taken up, and not, I don't know how it happened, but I was taken up and I was looking down on top of the castle. And at that time, what I was seeing was the past. I was seeing the siege, and I was seeing people clambering up the front, and they were attacking the castle. And there was a woman looking down, and she had long black hair, and she was wearing a green cloak. And as she was looking down at the battle that was happening in front of her, she was crying. But as she was crying, she was singing. And I saw behind her the lady in her light body, made of pure white light, as she always is, but this time she wasn't veiled and I saw her face. But it was at a distance, but her face was flashing and it was changing, and it was flashing into a million billion different faces, like every face of every goddess known throughout history was in her and was being revealed in her face. And as I saw this, I was completely overwhelmed with adoration and awe and fear as well, because I had never seen anything so divine in my entire life. And then her face began to slow down into one face. And I cannot even describe how she looked, but I knew if I looked at her face for a second longer, I would die immediately on the spot because I was so overwhelmed with love, and that was it. I just felt like I'd die. And she knew that in that moment, and she turned her face away from me. But what I saw is that as the woman, the human woman, was singing, the lady was singing behind her and she was singing through her. And this woman was a conduit for the lady. And even though she was enduring a most traumatizing, horrific experience and she was crying, she was still singing. And I didn't know at the time that the Cathars were renowned for their singing. And it said that when they were walking into the flames, they were singing.
Yes, they were singing when they walked into the flames. They were all burnt, folks. They were all burnt by the Roman Catholics Church. Now, it's very important, and we're all quite open and vulnerable right now, I'm sure, to not think, oh, the damn Catholics, why did they do that? This, we can approach this the same way they did when they were singing in the flames. We can transmute this energy into something that belongs to us, that belongs in our hearts, and we find there what it means to truly forgive. And that goes for that terrible incident in history and everything else in our life. Remember that. Remember forgiveness. Let's go on. You've got more to tell us.
Whitley, that was again extraordinary what you just shared, because the next part of the story is about exactly that. Because, like you, I have memories. I know I was there. And when I lived in Montségur, it all came back to me. And I knew nothing about the Cathars. I had no prior knowledge whatsoever, but I started to get dates, names, things like that, and they all correlated with historical facts. Um, and so I still don't know what to make of that. I haven't really analysed it at any length yet, but I do believe that it was no coincidence that I was there and that I had these experiences with the lady there. And so fast forward, so that when that happened, and I started to then see more soldiers climbing up and things like that, and I asked to be taken down, and so I was taken down, and then I really understood that Esclamond was a conduit for the lady, and she was one of many who's been chosen throughout history to be working with the lady in the physical realm, in different epochs throughout history. And that's when I started to understand more about Esclamond, when I had that experience.
Now, throughout our conversation, there has been a question that we haven't addressed directly, which is the question of the relationship between the lady, Mary, the mother of Jesus, and Mary Magdalene. And when you go to south of France, everyone who is uh, aware of this, which is practically everyone in the region, and they just don't talk about it unless they know that you have some reason to talk about it. They all say that it's Mary Magdalene, and they say she was Jesus's wife, and she came to the south of France after the execution, or the perhaps after the resurrection, with their children. And this is, of course, a very famous story now, thanks to Dan Brown. How do you react to all of that?
Really good question. Um, Gosh, I became very aware of that story when I was living there, and I actually met Henry Lincoln before he passed away, and we had a few conversations about this. Um, and I also saw the scrolls, the original scrolls that the Holy Blood and the Holy Grail were based upon, but not through Henry, through a man that I met synchronistically when I was living in Paris. And he took me, I met him at a book fair, and for some reason he trusted me and took me to his home and showed me. He had a secret room, and I'd been joking to my friends in England I was living the real life Da Vinci Code, and then I realized I actually was. And he opened this secret room, which had a kind of fake partition wall, and inside he had a computer, and then he had all these glass cases which had these scrolls in, and he told me he'd bought them 50 years before when he was 20 something. And he'd been following these mysteries for his whole life. And he also had a map, and that map was supposedly showing the burial place of Mary Magdalene, and it was in that area of France. And I asked him, "Have you ever been?" And excuse me, looked at this map and gone there, and he said yes, and it was already dynamited from the inside, so he
Yes,
couldn't get
that's
in. Mm,
right. It's been dynamited closed.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But it's still a place of power.
it is.
Did you ever go?
I did.
Tell us about it.
Well, we couldn't get inside,
Well,
but we
not,
got,
no, you can't.
yeah, but we got very close, and it was extremely powerful, like you say. Yeah.
Yes.
And I learned from the locals that a lot of the Cathars actually believed that they were descendants from Jesus and Mary Magdalene. That's another reason they were persecuted. And they would say that they were descendants of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. And there are people there to this day, families to this day, that are descendants of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. So they tell us.
Uh, did you ever meet Monsieur Plantard, or was he before your time?
He was before my time, but I actually met one of his sons.
You did.
I did.
Are you able to tell us about that? Because the family is still rather secretive.
They're still very secretive, but all I can say is that from my knowledge and what he told me, Pierre Plantard was not a fraud. He was not lying, but unfortunately, that's one of the ways they cover things up. They make it, well, we know in this field, they make everything look like it's unrealistic and untrue. He told me that it's absolutely still alive, and yeah, the
It's very
bloodline,
much alive.
it
Very
is.
much alive. Yes.
Mm.
My
And
little
when
boy.
you go to that region, you can feel it, can't you? Like it's everywhere.
It's everywhere. Yes, exactly. You certainly can feel it. Well, good. I'm glad because folks, there's no reason you should not go to that region of France and and feel this energy and go to Rennes Chateau and go to Monseigneur uh, and make a pilgrimage. Make it a sacred pilgrimage, and don't be afraid to take your prayers and your needs and your expectations. But, so many people become sort of mystic tourists, and they go and they want to see the lady. I want to see the lady. And then they don't, and they go home and just forget about it for the rest of their lives. It's not about seeing the lady, it's about discovering yourself. Pilgrimages are about discovering ourselves and not there. It's not tourism. Let me put it that way.
So true, Whitley.
It sure is. Now, there's still more that we haven't covered yet. What have I left out?
Okay, so there was another experience in Montségur in 2019. I've had more in between, but this one is significant because of something you said earlier. And I was it I'd just come back from filming Color Out of Space in Sintra with Richard because we just made that movie together, and we drove from Portugal back down to France and went straight to Montségur for the commemoration of the Cathars on March 16th, 2019. And after the ceremony, we were on the mountainside, and Richard and my friend Josephine walked down the mountain, and I stayed where I was because I wanted to pray. And as I did that, the lady walked up behind me, and I could feel her. And immediately I knew it was her. And she said, "If you would look upon my face and live, you must purify your heart from all negativity, fear, self-doubt, hatred, anger, and desire for revenge." And immediately I thought, huh? Why is she saying this to me? Why is she telling me I have desire for revenge? But that morning, Richard and I had been talking about what was done to the Cathars, and he was saying he still had a desire for revenge. And I was, thinking about that. And thinking, revenge, it never ends. It's a never-ending cycle, as we know. And so I was curious as to why she said that, but it made me understand why she'd never shown me her face, because she thought I would die. And that time when I did almost see her face, I really thought I would die. And so then, before I had a chance to question what was happening, this column of energy started pouring up through the mountain, through my body. And it was going in the opposite direction from when she scanned me. When she scanned me, it was going down. This time it was going up. And as it washed through me, I became aware of all these different areas in my body where I had all these emotions that I didn't even know were there. And every place where the energy touched, it was washing away those emotions. And eventually, and it didn't take very long, it was just a few minutes, I arrived at this place which I can only describe as like divine neutrality, where I felt completely neutral about everything, like in a beautiful way, though. It wasn't like not caring, it was not like that at all. And then in that moment, she stepped inside my body and merged with me. And I then could see the world through her eyes momentarily, and it was the most profound experience of my life, because the compassion and the mercy that she has for us, and the empathy and the sadness for all of our sorrows that we have to undergo, became very apparent to me. And not only for us as humans, but all beings in creation, from the tiniest ant to other God forms, perhaps, every single creation was shown to me, because that's how she sees things. And she had such love for every single life. And I will probably start crying.
Oh,
Apologies for that,
that's
but each time I can't help myself when I tell this story. Um, because the compassion and the love for all of creation that she has for all of us is so profound. And she showed me that in a way, it's all perfect, even the terrible things that happen. And we were talking about this, weren't we? Like how it's all perfect because somehow every incident in our existences, plural, in our many existences that we have, each one leads to something. It's that weaving that you were speaking about. Each one leads to something significant, even if we can't see it when we're in it at that moment in time. And to see the world and creation through her eyes was just, I can't even describe the love that she has for all of us. Every life is so profound, and she loves every single life absolutely equally.
This is called objective love. It's the love of God for the creation. And you felt that directly. You know, there's an ancient story that relates to the story of the Trinity, which is the story of the Sphinx. The Sphinx has the haunches of a bull, that is to say, the strength of a bull, the claws of a lion, that is to say, the courage of the lion, and the head of a man, that is to say, the intelligence of the human being. And when those three things come together, the Sphinx then has wings and rises above the world and has that very same objective feeling that you experienced, which is rich with love and acceptance. You experienced the 21st card of the Book of Love, which is hidden in the Tarot of Marseille. On the 21st card, which is called the World, you see in the four corners of the card the four beasts of the Sphinx: the wings, the man, the beast, and the heart, and a wreath around an individual who is at once man and woman, for this belongs to us all. I want to thank you for what you have done today in what the lady brought to us today.
Thank you, Whitley.
Well, thank you so much. Folks, I said I would talk a little bit about Fatima before we're finished. And I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to come back with the last word from Amanda, because I don't think we should leave without that. So just listen a little bit, Amanda. You need to know this because the Fatima experience is very important. The lady appears and has appeared in the Pyrenees and down those mountains for thousands of years. She is certainly Mary Magdalene. She is the Blessed Virgin. She is the earth. She is the sky. She is all of these things, and she is each of us, man and woman. That heart that Amanda saw at first, that red glow in the heart, is all of us, all of us. Now, I knew a Dominican priest who went to Fatima uh, and observed what the Jesuits called the dancing of the sun. And he said to me, it was not the sun. He said to me, it was a disc. And he said, I could see a ladder on it, and there were figures moving up and down the ladder, which gets us to another level of all of this. And he interviewed the children, and they described a lady very much like the lady Amanda and so many others have seen in that region. So just it's important to understand that then what happened there were a group of predictions which have been very badly obscured. You can't tell what they were except for one, that she said later there would be a glow in the sky when the on over Europe when the World War II would begin, and that glow in the sky happened when there was an extraordinary uh, solar flare in just before Hitler invaded Poland. So all of these violent things and wonderful things that happen on earth are reflected in heaven. And it is up to us to make the bridge between the lower and the higher, as above, so below. Okay, Amanda, I would like you to say a little bit to end this Easter journey we have taken.
Thank you. One of the deepest messages of the lady is that even though it sounds trite, love really is the answer. And that's one of the things she really wants me to communicate to people, that right now there's so much fear around the world with everything that's happening, so much uncertainty. And one of the things she told me is that we are her children, and she wants her children to be cared for, and she wants to love her children. And it's not because we have to behave in a certain way or earn it or anything like that. It's just who she is. And she wants her children to be brought back together again. And that's one of the most profound messages that she gave to me. She does not want to be worshipped. That was one of the first things she said. That she has no interest in being worshipped. That's not who she is. And she also explained to me that, like you said, she's been manifesting since the beginning of time, is how she explained it. And she's always been with us since the beginning of time. And she's guided us through many different difficulties in existence. I believe she was there in the caves during the ice ages, and that's why there are the carvings of the lady. I believe they are meant to represent her. And she told me she works always with different psychics to give us information so that we can help our other human family, so that we can guide each other and we can survive.
Have a joyous Easter, everybody. And remember that the women who first came to the grave, to the open tomb, thought that Jesus was the gardener. And that gardener is our journey in life. We are in the garden of life, and the lady is with us always. And all of the deities and presences that we love around the world are there. And that garden is inside us. The glow of the heart. Thank you very much, Amanda, for this wonderful experience. And thank you always, everyone, for being part of the Dreamland family. And as always, I would like to end with a request. Please subscribe to the site so I can keep going. I depend upon you and your effort, your willingness to put up a little money so that we can continue. Thank you.
You've been listening to Dreamland. Be sure to tune in again next week. Dreamland is brought to you by UnknownCountry.com and its family of subscribers. Our theme music is The O of Pleasure by Ray Lynch. Unknown Country was founded by Ann Strieber. Our news editor is Matthew Frizzell. Our coordinator is Amy Safrankova. Whitley Strieber is your Dreamland host, and I'm your announcer, Ted Alexander.